Hi, my name is Lucy Gaines, and the biofuel I chose was ethanol. Some background information of ethanol is actually the most common biofuel we're exposed to. This biofuel is a member of the alcohol family, and ethanol is a chemical compound made up of a hydroxyl group bonded with a carbon atom. So there's two carbon atoms, six hydrogen atoms, and one oxygen. Ethanol can replace gas, and the United States is leading in consumer numbers. How ethanol is grown slash cultivated. Most ethanol that is produced in the United States is produced by starch crop based. Most of the time, they produce by dry mills, which is whenever they grind corn into flour and then that gets fermented into ethanol. Sometimes, but it's very not common, is to use wet mills, which is when you separate the starch, protein, and fiber before you start the process of making it into ethanol. How ethanol is produced. Ethanol is produced through alcoholic fermentation. Corns, sugars, and starches are fermented to produce ethanol. This is known as conventional biofuel. Another way that ethanol can be produced is through trees and grasses, which is known as cellulosic ethanol, which is a very advanced way. And this is produced by biochemical and thermochemical pathways. This image is showing ethanol being produced. The status of ethanol production. Most of ethanol used in the world is from the United States. In our gasoline, at average, there's 10% of ethanol. This gasoline is the gasoline that's used in like most of our cars and vehicles. They are working to make E20 gasoline more useful for like all engines. And then there's a lot higher numbers of ethanol in some gases, but only very specific cars can have that type of gas in their car. The impact of ethanol on our carbon footprint. Ethanol is shown to have a lower carbon footprint than gas. Grain-based ethanol cuts about 52% of green gas emissions down. And ethanol is known as a clean fuel because of this. This shows the amount of CO2 emissions compared to ethanol and gasoline. You can see the big jump. The economic impact of ethanol is actually significant. In 2022, the ethanol industry has created 78,000 jobs for people and about 52.1 billion of the gross domestic product. And for just household incomes in general, over $28.7 billion. Ethanol is actually the cheapest energy source because typically every country has the ability to produce it. So it's not like a super competitive industry. Efforts to communicate the use of ethanol. There's a bunch of programs. For example, the Biomass Crop Assistance Program provides assistance to any landowners that will establish and produce the crops to use to produce biofuels such as ethanol. Qualified producers that are eligible for reimbursement of 50% if they grow crops to produce ethanol. And the Biorefinery Assistance Program will help with loans to develop and construct advanced biofuel places such as ethanol. My analysis and next steps, as I've been like researching ethanol, I think something that would really help with our carbon footprint is we need to start putting gas into our cars that contain more ethanol. And in order to do that, we need to create engines that are not only more engines, but more engines that are also affordable for everyone and make it the standard engine that has more ethanol instead of relying on gas. If funding was not an obstacle, as I was researching, I found this thing how Honeywell is trying to make airplanes, their engines run off of ethanol, which would be amazing. And the fact that um, there would cause a lot less pollution and would decrease our carbon footprint, which would really help out our environment. But obviously, a lot of money has to go into that because there has to be a lot of test runs and trial and errors and probably more expensive engines. And here are my citations.